Welcome. Hello, everyone. My name is Katie O'Hara-Krebs, and I am the social media editor for Portal Libraries in the Academy. Today, I am pleased to welcome Michelle Ehrenpreis, Electronic Resources Librarian and Assistant Professor with the Leonard Leaf Library at Lehman College, to speak with us about her article with John DeLooper, Chatbot Assessment, Best Practices for Artificial Intelligence in the Library. For all of you out there, this article can be found on Portal's preprint site in volume 25, issue 4. And the article is free to read, and viewers may access it by navigating to the Johns Hopkins Press preprint site for Portal. So welcome, Michelle. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, so I wonder if you could give us a little insight into what was the motivation or inspiration behind this research topic?
Sure. Well, essentially, we had implemented our chatbot way back when in 2019 as part of a pilot program with our university. Five different schools at CUNY University, including Lehman College, had the opportunity to test out the chatbot, and we were lucky to be included to test it out on our website. We actually wrote initially an article about its implementation. And it was always in our mind that, we've implemented it, we think it's going well, we think it's useful, but how is it really doing? Is it really living up to its standards? Is it really having the impact that we hoped it would? And really, things really changed for us, as it did for many people, when ChatGPT came on the scene in the end of 2022. In 2023, we decided, okay, I think we're going to try to attempt an assessment of the chatbot. And that's actually when we were informed by the vendor, Ivy, that they were actually going to be using ChatGPT's API in the product that we had. So it went from a rules-based chatbot to now an augmented retrieval chatbot, which really changed the game of how it was operating. It was a lot more powerful. It was obviously able to generate material. And most importantly, its ability to scrape our data went from 5 pages, as we discussed in the article, to essentially all the pages that we have on our website, including all our research guides. And really, at this point, then we felt that it's time to see an assessment of, is this upgrade now really helping our students get what they need? And is this technology doing what we want? And how can we further harness it?
That's great. Yeah. So could you give us a little summary of how things went and about what you all were writing about in your article that was recently published?
Sure. So essentially, we looked for the assessment at the semester of data, which is actually spring of 2023, when IB Quantum came out, which is when the chatbot now had the ChatGPT API. We looked at 100 questions out of 800 questions that were posed to the chatbot. We also looked at 39 tickets, which is where users can create a ticket if they don't like the answer that the chatbot gives, something that John and I, my coworker and my colleague who wrote the article with me, responded directly. And then in order to assess how the chatbot was doing, both in terms of how complete and how correct the answers were, we created a rubric. And this is where a bulk of the research and bulk of our time took. And it was really for us the most rewarding part of the process, because we really looked at the literature to look at how librarians evaluate chat transcripts using Brusa guidelines and other measures. We also were able to look at a deep dive of IB Quantum to see what metrics the vendor has put in place for to gauge how well they feel it's doing, based on a stamp of basically an answer that they felt the chatbot wasn't giving a good answer. For example, it said, "I'm struggling, I'm having a hard time answering this question," or user feedback such as thumbs up, thumbs down, ratings, etc. And these components help us to build this rubric where we're literally looking for correctness and completeness. And really, the biggest measure was to see how well the chatbot was doing in terms of those areas. And what we found was three main areas. I should pause for a minute. And once we have our scores, we then did a content analysis of the transcripts so that we can tie the scores to particular subjects, really to pinpoint the weaknesses. Where is the chatbot struggling? And we found three main areas: requests for an agent. This is actually a service that the chatbot allows where you can be directed to a live agent, something my colleague and I had not taken advantage of, but we were noticing because of what's being implemented across campus and other departments, the use of an agent. We should also consider this. We didn't, because we have our library chat like many universities do. But this is something that we now incorporated and we're much more aware of. Requests for books, which we felt was really low-hanging fruit, and it surprised us and interested us that the chatbot struggled with, and we attempted to correct through making a page with dedicated links to our reserved textbooks. Those are the most popular books that are asked about, and other natures. And the third main area was a request for research. And this really solidified what we had kind of known all along, and the research suggests, which is that the chatbot is not really geared towards in-depth research, but we need to strengthen our message to users using the chatbot. You need to go to a library. You need to use the chat service for in-depth research. The chatbot is really here for more low-level questions. That's really its sweet spot. So that was
Well,
really the main objectives, the main things that we found in the article. And ultimately, we've used this research and we're continuing to this research to improve the chatbot experience for users and actually as a reflection of our library website in terms of the kind of information that users can find and that the chatbot can find for them.
yeah, that is a really, I think that you have addressed two issues, not only looking at what the chatbot, assessing how its ability, and then informing the practice of your library. That's wonderful. I wonder if you could share, the big takeaway that you might want readers to get from this article.
I think the big takeaway is that librarians and portal readers should know that they have more control over this technology than you think. I think that this technology has taken us all by surprise, and there's been a lot of fear, interest, confusion, excitement, but we have a lot more control. And in our example, we did not have to do a heavy lift to even invest in the chatbot. The university did that for us. As you know, you can look up online, Ivy is a one of many companies. So you may have an opportunity to kind of control this technology in your own way. We know that students are using chatbots, they're using it for their research, whether it's Gemini, ChatGPT, etc. If you have an opportunity to implement a chatbot on your library website and you want to control a little bit more about what information users are finding, if you have an opportunity to license one based on your university or based on one of the free implementations or, a limited license API, go for it. But rather to not be afraid of the technology, but realize that you can control it more than you think. You can experiment with it. And, students value our opinions. We are valued for expertise. Being honest about its limitations and its capabilities, I think will really help you to feel more prepared and help readers to feel more prepared for this technology as we advance with it and we see what it's capable of.
That's great insight and great things for us all to keep in mind. Well, Michelle, thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. This has been wonderful. I just want to remind our viewers that they can read your article for free, again, via the Johns Hopkins Press preprint site for Portal. And thank you again for being with me. And I invite readers and viewers to look for upcoming author interviews. Thanks so much.
Thank you.